A Pan-Africanist is a leader, an individual who loves Africa. A Pan-Africanist is a leader, an individual who protects Africa. A Pan-Africanist is a leader or an individual who supports and acknowledges the beauty of Africa. Over the years and within some very few months, my Kenyan president has been lauded as a Pan-Africanist. I don't dispute that fact. In fact, I support and I respect the opinions of such people who laud him as a Pan-Africanist. But when I see and I check the definition of a Pan-Africanist, I find no liking, I find no characteristic of a Pan-Africanist in the Kenyan president. According to statements written about Pan-Africanism and a Pan-Africanist, the definition of a Pan-Africanist is very simple and very straightforward. In fact, Pan-Africanism is defined as a political doctrine and a movement with the aim of unifying and uplifting the African nations and the African diaspora as a universal African community. When we look at who a Pan-Africanist is, we find that a Pan-Africanist is an individual who is Afrocentric. When we talk about Afrocentricity, that is an individual who advocates for Africa, an individual who respects Africa, and an individual who is ready to protect African resources, an individual who will solicit for the unity of the continent, an individual who believes in the beauty of Africa and the strength of Africa, and most importantly, an individual, when this person is a leader who protects Africans, who believes in the welfare of Africans. My president has been going to these conferences organized by African leaders and African presidents, and at the same time attending global conferences organized, such as the one which was organized recently in Nairobi, Kenya, during the Africa Global Climate Change Summit. And then another one was organized by the United Nations, UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly. When attending African conferences, you will find the Kenyan president, His Excellency President Ruto, speaking very toughly on Africa for Africa and agitating for African unity and stressing the need for African countries to focus on the development of themselves without relying on foreign governments. The same president, when he attends global conferences, for example, the one which they attended, the UNGA conference, the United Nations General Assembly conference, which was attended by, among others, the United States President Joe Biden. When he attends such conferences, you will find the same leader talking very toughly and talking very boldly about these foreign countries and embracing their support for Africa. The same president, when you come back home, the same president is implementing the instructions of the International Monetary Fund on the citizens. Why am I saying so? We discussed the issue of the Kenyan taxes, and we did agree that the Kenyan taxes are implemented by the IMF, International Monetary Fund. Why were we saying such statements? We said that when IMF gives African countries loans and any other country across the world, those loans comes with very strict conditions, and part of these conditions are the tax mechanisms that every government will implement to make sure that money is collected and returned back. The same applies to the Kenyan government. The current administration imposed very heavy taxes on its citizens under the instructions of the IMF. The IMF gives them loans, and these loans comes with very strict instructions. you must implement this form of taxes. You must structure your institutions this way. And that is what the Kenyan president implemented in the country. If this Kenyan president was a Pan-Africanist, if this Kenyan president really loved Africans, and if this Kenyan president was concerned with the well-being of Africans, the implementation of these taxes could have been halted. I say that if the Kenyan president, His Excellency Ruto, loved Kenyans who are Africans, then the taxes which are currently in force in the country should have been halted. Implementing the punitive taxes on the citizens means that this is an individual who doesn't love Africans. This is an individual who is not concerned about the welfare of the people. This is an individual, a leader, who is focused on implementing the affairs, the interests of foreign governments. When I was starting this discussion, I did say categorically that a Pan-Africanist is somebody who is Afrocentric, a person who loves Africa, a person who believes in the strength of Africa, a person who is committed to protect the well-being of Africans, and a person who is focused on protecting African resources. The same president in my country, Kenya, is one depending on, let me say, handouts from these foreign governments. Kenya understands that various African countries are currently at war, are unstable. Just to name a few, in fact, our neighbor Sudan is currently in political turmoil. Sudan is still fighting to date. Ethiopia is still unstable. Congo DRC is still unstable. Libya is still unstable. West African countries are still unstable. If this individual was a Pan-Africanist, an individual who loves Africa, and an individual who is concerned about the well-being of Africans, and who is concerned about the security of Africa, the first priority was to sort out these wars in Africa. In fact, Sudan is just our neighbor. The president bypassed the war in Sudan and is currently sending Kenyan soldiers to Haiti. Haiti is not a country in Africa. Haiti is not a country in Africa. There is a war in Haiti and there is war in Sudan. Sudan is an African country and it is just our neighbor, a few miles from Kenya. The Kenyan president bypassed Sudan and said that peace in Sudan can wait and peace in Haiti can be solved now, as the peace in Sudan and Congo and Libya and the rest of African countries, in fact even Somalia, is currently unstable. The president, because he was given 14 billion by the US government, he decided to pocket the handouts and send Kenyan soldiers to Haiti, not forgetting that Sudanese people are killing themselves, forgetting that Somalis are killing themselves, forgetting that the Congolese are killing themselves. If the Kenyan president was a Pan-Africanist, then Sudan was to be a priority, Congo was to be a priority, Somalia was to be a priority. Because he is not a Pan-Africanist, he is not concerned about the welfare of Africa, he sent Kenyan soldiers to Haiti. And because he is not a Pan-Africanist, he implemented heavy taxes on Kenyans upon the instructions of the International Monetary Fund, with complete regard of the interests of the well-being, of the welfare of Kenyans. Can we now admit that the Kenyan president is not a Pan-Africanist based on these resolutions and these reservations?
Leaders come from society. leaders come from society,
Right.
right? So they come from everywhere. We can look in this room, look at all of you who are sitting up here, and even if we go into the floor, all our backgrounds are varied. So is the question or the issue around the leaders, or is the issue around the societies that we're creating that actually bear fruit to those leaders? If I could put that question to you, how do we begin sort of making sense of that dynamic? Because otherwise, again, we'll be talking in half a decade, half a century, a century.
Thank you very much. My name is William Ruto, just for the record.
And I shall apologize.
Let me pick up from where President Kagame left. And he couldn't have put it better by saying that the issue is not so much what the problem is or what the solutions are. The issue is we know the problem, and we have a good account of what the solution could possibly be. Standing between the problem and the solution is a critical entity called leaders, people who need to bridge, to create a bridge between the problem and where we want to go, the present and the Africa that we want. Leaders. I will squarely say that those of us who have been given or have been entrusted with the responsibility to lead must match what we say with what we do. That is what will make the difference. Let me give you a very practical example. The last elections in Kenya, the president and myself went on a slogan, kusema na kutenda, meaning to walk the talk or to match what we say with what we do. That is what Kenyans bought into. And therefore, for us as a continent, and I have listened carefully to very eminent persons who've spoken here, we have what it takes. We know where we want to go. We know how to get there. Standing between us and where we want to go is decisive, bold, pragmatic decisions that will take leaders to make. Even to move society, assuming that society is part of our challenge, it will take leaders to inspire society, to make sure society sees what the future holds for all of us. And therefore, I am a very proud African, and I am confident. And looking around, and I have been, in the last 1 year or so, I have been to various meetings around this continent. I see a lot of prepared African leaders, people who are prepared to make the critical decisions that will take us to the Africa we want. Let me give you an example. In the last 1 year, as East Africans, we have made decisions that has taken 50 years for them to be made. In the last 1 year, we have made a decision, for example, that we must bring down the barriers. And instead of having borders that act as roadblocks, we should get borders that act as bridges. That is why I didn't need a passport to come from Kenya to Rwanda. I just needed my identification card. I mean, it would have been very difficult to make that decision in the face of all the challenges we have about security and all the rest of it. But on the balance of issues, the good that comes with eliminating the barriers that exist currently as borders far supersedes the negatives that would accompany that decision. That is why the leaders of East Africa made that decision. Let me give you another example. In the last 1 year, jointly with another 5 countries in the East African region, Rwanda included, we have launched the first ever standard gauge railway out of Mombasa to Kampala, to Kigali, to South Sudan. It was done last week. It has taken us 100 years. The railway we are using was built not last century. It was built the century before. Right? And yet, it is absolutely clear to all of us that by having a standard gauge railway, we can reduce the cost of transport by anything up to 70% and make the products that we produce much more competitive, open up markets for our products, and make sure that we create more integration, create more jobs, and create a prosperous region. That is the kind of decisions that need to be made so that we can take this country, this continent and this region to the next level. And I am confident, very confident, as a young leader in this continent, that we are going to make those decisions.
Deputy President Ruto, thank you very much. Okay.
Now, President William Ruto is in the United States for a 4-day official visit. The president, this time round, decided to fly a business jet that KTN News has since established is a Boeing business jet. The aircraft service is run by a United Arab Emirates company, Royal Jet Group, of course, a premium private aviation company based in Abu Dhabi. It is a 7-year-old Boeing 737-700, one of the 8 owned by the company founded in 2003. Emmanuel To is here with the details of this aircraft that will cost the taxpayer an upward of 200 million shillings, just to take and bring back the president and his team.
As high-ranking state officials saw him off at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport Sunday night, ready for the historic trip to the United States of America, a bird never before publicly seen was spotted on the airside, all white with 2 strips running across the fuselage. This was his choice for transporting this journey. When the pictures and videos hit the public space, a debate was ignited. The head of state's usual mode of transport out of the country is a presidential jet, a 30-year-old Fokker 70 extended range christened Harambee 1 with a carrying capacity of 26 passengers, but these aircraft can only fly 5 hours non-stop. He opted for a charter Boeing 737-700 business jet from the Abu Dhabi-based Royal Jet Group, a premium private aviation company. A quotation requested and sent to the Standard Group from the operator puts the cost of hiring a similar state-of-the-art aircraft at a total cost of $748,600 US, which translates to about 98 million shillings one way for a 34-seater plane. A return journey will cost another 98 million shillings. Details show the plane could cost more than 2 million shillings per hour, and these will vary depending on routing, scheduling, number of passengers, year of manufacture, among other details. Then there is the takeoff tax, landing tax, and parking. In addition to the amount spent getting the aircraft from Abu Dhabi to Nairobi and back to the United Arab Emirates, a near 5-hour journey on both legs could each cost anywhere between 8 million shillings and 10 million shillings. On the first leg, the jet left Abu Dhabi at 9:03 a.m. on Saturday, landing at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport almost 4 hours later. It spent a day on the ground ahead of Ruto's trip. He will depart at 9:48 p.m. Sunday and landed at Santiago de Compostela in Spain yesterday at 5:30 a.m. local time. 8 hours and 42 minutes later, ostensibly to refuel. This aircraft, a Boeing 737-700, has a flying range of 10 hours non-stop. The plane then left Spain for Atlanta, Georgia, a journey of 8 hours and 42 minutes before landing at the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Fitted with 10 auxiliary tanks, the ultra-modern aircraft went into commercial use about 9 years ago. This particular one, used by President Ruto and his team, is configured for day travel at 34 seats, 8 of them VIP, 8 business and 18 standard, and 5 crew members. It also has an executive bedroom. This extravagant travel comes as the government promised to implement austerity measures to reduce the weight on the taxpayer. The government is also planning to acquire a new state-of-the-art jet, which will replace the KAF 308, which was bought in 1995 by retired President the late Daniel Arap Moi.
Presidential jet, you remember, was purchased in the early 80s or late 80s by former President Daniel Arap Moi. And probably this offers that opportunity now to reconsider all this equipment, be it aircraft and other military equipment, Honorable Speaker, towards modernizing them.
It is not the first time President William Ruto is showing his taste for expensive things. In 2013, he was under fire for hiring a private jet for a 5-day shuttle diplomacy over the International Criminal Court in 2013. A business trip for the team, assuming all the 34 seats were occupied, would have cost the government about 40 million shillings on commercial jet return, 160 million shillings less. Emmanuel Toh, KT News, Nairobi.